You know that feeling, right? That little buzz you get after you've done something genuinely nice for someone else. Like you weren't expecting anything back at all.
Yeah.
Maybe you helped a neighbor carry something heavy, or you, I don't know, picked up some litter you saw, or maybe just really listened when a friend needed to talk. And afterwards, you just felt better, a bit lighter, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. It's a distinct feeling. And, people have argued about that for ages. Is it just a nice little side effect? A bonus?
Or is there something like more fundamental going on?
Exactly. Is there a real deep connection between helping someone else and, well, feeling happier ourselves?
Right. Is that helper's high actually a thing? Something wired into us? That's really what we're getting into today in this deep dive. We looked at some really fascinating material that explores this, goes into the evolutionary stuff, the psychological debates, even brain science.
And personality, too. It all seems to connect.
Yeah, exactly. It's exploring what the sources are calling the ripple effect of happiness. How putting kindness out there seems to, well, ripple back to you.
It's like following the clues, seeing if helping others is maybe just, inherently part of our own well-being.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The first big question the sources dive into, and it's kind of a puzzle from one angle, is just why do we help anyone at all? Especially if you think purely evolutionarily, survival, passing on your genes, spending your energy, your time, maybe even taking risks for someone else. It feels a bit weird.
It does seem like a bit of a biological paradox, doesn't it? On the surface. But evolutionary thinking has come up with some ideas for how these helping behaviors could actually stick around. One big one is kin selection.
Kin selection, so helping your relatives, your family.
Precisely. The idea is you share a lot of genes with your family, siblings, cousins, kids, parents. So even if helping them costs you a little bit, personally, if it helps them survive and reproduce significantly more than the genes that made you likely to help.
Well, they still get passed on through your relatives. Ah, okay. So it's like indirectly helping copies of your own genes survive, just in other people, your family. That makes a sort of cold evolutionary logic, I guess.
It does, from that viewpoint.
Yeah.
And then the other major idea they talk about is reciprocal altruism. This one deals with helping people you're not related to.
Okay, so why help a friend? Or even a stranger?
Well, this one's based on, reciprocity. I help you now.
And maybe you'll help me later.
Exactly. It's an exchange, even if it's not immediate. Like the sources mentioned chimpanzees sharing food, they're more likely to share with chimps who've shared with them before.
A sort of you scratch my back
Yes.
system.
That's the idea. Now, this needs a bit more brain power, right? You need to recognize individuals, remember who did what, figure out who cooperates and who doesn't play fair.
Right. So both those ideas, kin selection and reciprocal altruism, give us biological reasons why helping might exist, based on genes or future favors.
They provide a strong evolutionary foundation, yes, rooted in survival and potential benefits down the line.
But okay, let's move beyond just genes and favors, because that still doesn't feel like the whole story when we think about that feeling, that warmth. What about the psychology? Are we ever really truly selfless? Or is there always some kind of self-interest lurking underneath? That whole psychological altruism versus egoism debate.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting, looking at the motivations. Psychological egoism basically argues that everything we do voluntarily, even stuff that looks totally selfless, is ultimately driven by wanting something for ourselves.
But not necessarily like money or obvious rewards.
Exactly. It could be an internal reward, feeling good about yourself, feeling virtuous, or maybe more commonly, avoiding a bad feeling, like feeling guilty if you don't help, or feeling distressed just seeing someone suffer.
So if I help someone who's upset because seeing them upset makes me feel bad and helping them stops my bad feeling, is the real driver just getting rid of my own discomfort? Is my helper's high just me rewarding myself for feeling better?
That's the core argument of psychological egoism, yes. The ultimate goal in that view is always to improve your own internal state, feel less bad or feel good. But psychologists have done some really clever experiments trying to tease these motives apart. The sources bring up Daniel Batson's work.
Well, the Batson experiments, they mentioned a shock study.
Yes, that's a classic one. Basically, people watch someone who is actually in on the experiment pretend to get painful electric shocks while doing some task.
Oof. Okay, designed to make the watcher feel bad, I imagine.
Definitely. But the clever part was how they set it up. They wanted to see if people would still help, even if they could easily just leave, escape the situation that was making them feel distressed.
Okay. So if it's purely selfish to stop my own bad feeling, I just leave, right? Problem solved for me.
That would be the prediction. Why stick around and potentially offer to take the shocks yourself if you could just walk away and not see the suffering anymore? But what Batson found, especially when he made people feel more empathy for the person getting shocked.
How did they do that? Make them feel empathy?
Oh, things like telling them the person shared similar values or interests, making them feel more connected. And in those high empathy situations, a lot of people still offered to trade places and take the shocks themselves, even when they had that easy option to just leave.
Wow. They chose actual pain for themselves, even when they could have just avoided the whole thing and stopped seeing the other person suffer.
That's the key finding. It really suggests that, yeah, maybe avoiding our own distress is one reason we help, but it's probably not the only reason. Empathy, really feeling for the other person, seems to be a powerful motivator in its own right. It suggests we can have genuinely other-focused motives. We want to reduce their suffering.
Okay, so empathy seems absolutely central here, which ties into the next bit about feelings or affective states and this idea of mind reading.
Right. The source material really stresses how our motivations are tied up with our feelings. There's this model they sometimes show. You perceive something in the world as stimulus, like seeing yummy food or seeing someone happy or someone in pain. That leads to an internal feeling, an affective state. Pleasure, distress, warmth, whatever. And that feeling is what then kicks off a motivation, which leads to a behavior.
Okay, so like seeing cake, stimulus, feeling of desire, pleasure, affective state, motivation to get cake, eating cake, behavior, that's pretty clearly self-focused.
Exactly. And the argument is that the real difference between self-focused and other-focused motivation isn't whether feelings are involved. Feelings seem to be involved in all motivation. The key is what triggered the feeling in the first place.
Ah, so it's about the source of the feeling.
Precisely. If the stimulus is something directly good for you, the cake, money, praise, the feeling drives a self-serving goal. But if the stimulus is someone else's state, you see them joyful, or you see them hurting the feeling that evokes can drive an other regarding motivation, you want to maintain their joy or you want to reduce their pain.
So the feeling inside me might be similar, good or bad, but if it's sparked by noticing how someone else is doing, that's what can lead to altruism. And well, to do that, you first have to realize how they are doing.
Bingo. And that's where mind reading, or theory of mind, comes in. Our ability to grasp that other people have their own thoughts, beliefs, intentions, and importantly, their own feelings, which might be totally different from ours right now.
Like you see someone trip and wince, and even though you're fine, you understand they're probably feeling pain.
Exactly that. And the sources point out that this ability, especially understanding others' feelings, that their pain, their joy, their fear, seems really fundamental for altruistic motivation. It's quite interesting, actually, that little kids start showing basic helping behaviors, like trying to comfort someone crying.
Yeah.
Right around the same age, they start developing this ability to attribute feelings and intentions to others. It's like understanding someone else has an inner emotional world is linked to wanting to help them navigate it.
So being able to perceive someone else's emotional reality is almost like step one for wanting to help them. That feels pretty deep.
It really does.
Yeah.
And connecting this to what's physically happening inside us, well, that takes us to the brain science.
Ah, the neuroscience part, where we look for the physical signs of all this. The sources mention fMRI studies. Maybe a quick reminder of what fMRI is.
Sure thing. fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging. Basically, it's a brain scanning technique that measures brain activity, but indirectly. When a part of your brain works harder, it calls for more oxygenated blood.
Okay.
And the fMRI scanner can detect the tiny magnetic differences between blood with oxygen and blood without it. So it lets researchers see which brain areas are sort of lighting up, becoming more active during different tasks or when thinking about different things.
Got it. So it shows the busy spots in the brain. And what did these studies find about people who, tend to be more helpful?
Well, a lot of this research uses questionnaires first, like the self-report altruism scale, where people rate how often they do helpful things. And what's fascinating is that how altruistic people say they are seems to actually correlate with specific patterns of brain activity they show during certain tasks.
So people who report being more helpful, their brains actually look different in action in these specific situations.
That's the finding, yeah. One key area they discuss is the right superior temporal cortex, the RSTC. This part of the brain showed different activity levels depending on how altruistic someone reported being. Specifically, the more altruistic people showed more activity in their RSTC when they were just watching someone else often a computer in the experiment, play a game to win rewards compared to when they were playing the game themselves.
Hang on, more activity when watching someone else win something? That seems backwards. Wouldn't my own reward circuits be buzzing when I'm the one winning?
And that's the interesting contrast. For people who reported being less altruistic, or even for the highly altruistic people when they were playing for themselves, this specific bit of the RSTC tended to be less active compared to when the more altruistic folks were just observing. The size of that difference, how much more active the RSTC was when watching versus playing, actually tracked with their self-reported altruism scores.
Okay, what does the RSTC normally do? What's its job?
It's generally involved in social perception, processing information about other people, understanding biological movement, figuring out what others might be intending to do, processing social cues. It helps us make sense of the social world.
Okay, so putting that together. More altruistic people have higher activity in the social perception area when watching someone else strive for a goal compared to when they're striving themselves. Does that suggest that maybe differences in altruism start really early, like in how our brains literally process information about other people?
That's a really key implication, yes. It suggests it's not just about the warm, fuzzy feeling after you help. It might be rooted in fundamental differences in how tuned in our brains are to the actions and states of others right from the get-go.
Wow.
Some people might just be neurally wired to pay more attention to or process more deeply what's happening with others. And maybe that difference in perception is a foundation for being more likely to help. It links the behavior right back to how the brain takes in social information.
That's a really powerful link, perception driving behavior. And this seems to connect to broader things like personality and just general well-being too, right? The sources mentioned that.
Absolutely. It fits quite nicely with research on traits like affiliation, which is basically, how much someone naturally seeks out and enjoys social connection. It overlaps with things like extroversion and sympathy, which we already know are linked to being more pro-social, more likely to help.
Right, that makes intuitive sense. People who like being around people and connecting often seem more helpful.
And the sources take it a step further. They point out that this affiliative drive enjoying social bonds might even have links to our physical health. Some research suggests positive social engagement could trigger physiological pathways related to calmness, healing, maybe even better immune function.
Whoa, wait, so liking connecting with people, which makes you more likely to help them, might actually be physically good for you, like on a biological level.
That's the really intriguing possibility. It suggests this whole system is interconnected. Our social behavior benefiting others and potentially boosting our own physical health and resilience. It's quite a ripple effect.
That really is significant. And they also mentioned resilience, like bouncing back from stuff.
Yeah, resilience, being able to manage emotional ups and downs. It's not a direct driver of helping, like empathy, maybe, but being resilient is obviously good for overall well-being, and it might make it easier to engage with others suffering without getting overwhelmed, allowing you to help more effectively.
Okay, so when you pull all these threads together, the evolutionary ideas, the psychology of empathy versus egoism, the brain science pointing to differences in social perception in the RSTC, and how it connects to personality traits like affiliation and maybe even our physical health, it really does paint a compelling picture.
It really does. It strongly suggests that good feeling we started with, the one you get after helping, it's not just random, it's not just a fluke. There seems to be a real scientific basis for this link. Engaging with others' well-being, noticing it, feeling something about it, acting on it seems deeply wired into the systems that support our own positive feelings, our own thriving, maybe even our physical health.
So the big takeaway from this deep dive really seems to be that saying, "it feels good to do good," is, well, it's more than just a saying. It points to something fundamental about how we're built. Helping others seems intrinsically tied to our own happiness and well-being.
It's almost like a positive feedback loop built into us.
Which definitely leaves us with something pretty powerful to think about, doesn't it? A final thought maybe for you listening. If our ability to notice, understand, and respond to how others are doing is so closely linked to our own positive feelings and maybe even health, what might happen if we consciously tried to strengthen that capacity? Like, what if we deliberately practiced paying attention to others, cultivating empathy, looking for ways to connect and help, even in small ways? What kind of ripple effect could that create both out in the world and, well, inside ourselves?
That's a fascinating question to explore further, for sure.
It really is. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope it's given you some interesting things to chew on and maybe inspires a few positive ripples out there. Keep exploring.